Dan Teasdale, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real honor. Hey, you're a funny guy, you know?
Oh, why, thank you.
And you make really funny games, so I wanted to talk to you on the show for a long time.
Awesome.
So what's life like these days? What are you working on?
We are wrapping up 100-foot robot golf right now, which is coming out October 10, which is very, very, very soon.
That's scarily soon. You're not quite there yet?
No, we've cleared certification, so like we're through, like we've passed the point of no return. So a game will come out on October 10. We're just doing like press, and we're doing we're tweaking a couple of things. We're going to put into a patch, and like all of the usual like releasing a video game stuff essentially.
Okay, how has this process been for you?
Very busy. It's been one of those. It's like one of those things where we've built this amazing game of like it's big robots playing golf, but then we're doing PlayStation VR on it. We're doing online with it. We ended up doing this like hour-long anime story that we blend in through gameplay, and it's just we ended up making something really big, and then realized it was really big like halfway through the process. So it's one of those things like crap. We actually have to like work really, really hard to get this thing out, but it came together. It looks great. Please pre-order this game.
It's so weird to have a game that's like the core of it is a joke, like hey, giant mechs, and then they're playing golf, and to like see like the project scope balloon because of that. Like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we had an hour-long anime? Yeah, that would make me laugh. Let's spend hundreds and hundreds of hours sweating doing that. Yeah,
it makes sense at the end. Like I totally do not regret doing any of it. I think everything came out super great, and I'm really happy we went down this road. But like this whole thing started off with we were trying to figure out what to do for narrative, and we just come off Roundabout, which was all FMV, and that was pretty much the limits of my like FMV directing abilities. Was I have a fixed camera on a tripod looking into a car, and we do 15-second cuts. Done. That's my limit. And so we're like, okay, we can't do that again. We can't shoot like cockpit view for everything. Let's just find a really cheap anime, like really cheap 70s, 80s anime, license it, and we'll overdub it, and that'll be our plan. It's like that's a really good way to reduce scope and still have it really, really fun. And then we announced the game is like the thing that started all of this rolling. We announced the game at PSX last year, and we got this like ridiculous response. Like we like people cheering in the audience, and like we're coming out of the theater, and like some guy on the escalator is like, "Hey, did you see that 100-foot robot golf thing? That looks amazing." And we're like, "Yeah, that's great, awesome." And so we started kind of ramping up like the polish and ramping up the kind of things we were doing to the point where we have like these amazing robots designed by Doug Harvey, and there's these amazing cutscenes made by like Soaps, and like these characters conceived by Charm, which like all these amazing people like coming into like essentially a 2-person project and like elevating this thing up to this like crazy, basically elevating it beyond where a joke about 100-foot robots playing golf, like way above where that quality level should be.
So wait a minute, you're not licensing the 70s, 80s anime? It's all original now?
It's all original. So we had Soaps went through and like gave us a whole bunch of animations and characters. We have like the aura hack and people doing backgrounds for us. Like we basically created like anime by accident.
So what's your read on it? Like, why were people so excited? Is it the anime fans out there or just the comedy fans out there?
I don't know. I don't know. Like I think it's some part of it's anime fans, and I think there's some part of it is people who, for some reason, like the no Goblin aesthetic of just like really dumb stuff. But I think a lot of it comes down to is like there really hasn't been a fun golf game in a really long time. Like you look at like Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy or however. I should probably learn to pronounce his name before I do like a full like press run on this stuff.
Golf but, like, guys, yeah,
that guy, you know the guy. But like it's been a really long time since there's been a fun golf game. It's been a really long time since there's been a good split screen game. And then we're also coming out on PlayStation VR, so like the idea you can pick up a headset and then ride on top of a robot and play golf. Like there's all these kind of things that I think we're hitting that are really, really fun, and I think that people haven't really actually kind of experienced in a long time or ever.
Yeah. So what were your inspirations for the actual golf mechanics in the game? Are you a big fan of certain golf games from the past?
We actually pulled mechanics from a whole bunch of different places. Like we're obviously Hot Shots is obviously a big one to pull from. We actually got into Power Star Golf for a while, like before like we hit like that microtransaction kind of ramp, and like that was actually kind of fun, and that was kind of one of those things that kind of like warmed us up a little bit. Like, hey, maybe making a golf game in 2016 isn't a bad idea, and we kind of took from that, and then we kind of gave every robot its own swing mechanic as well. So like the rich robots have the very classic like 3-click swing. We have these dual pilot robots that have like a swing for each arm essentially, and you're controlling the power in each arm. And then we have like a semi-rhythm style thing for the bio robots where you're locking in like dials that are rotating around. And so we kind of like blew everything out and gave them all of these like unique feels that you can kind of switch between, kind of more like a fighting game than a golf game in a sense, because they all have different like skills and abilities.
So at what point does it stop being funny when developing this thing? Like, you know, the pitch of all these robots playing golf, at some point after like 6 months of just working your ass off, is like, okay, I regret adding all these different swing mechanics to all these different robots. This is a bad idea after all.
Around the time when I'm like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning working on something, it's like, man, I really would like to sleep about now. But like, it's still funny. Like I'm just like polishing up some stuff in like some of my cutscenes, like for day one, and like I'm still cracking up at some of like the dumb goofs we've put into this thing. We also have the McIlroy Brothers doing all the commentary for us, and so we have hours and hours of commentary going through, and it'll be just one of those things where I'm just playing through and I'll hear a line that I haven't heard in like 2 months. And then I'll just like be weeping at my desk, and Pans will wonder why I'm weeping at my desk. And it's still funny, which I think is a good sign. I haven't hit that point. Like I've had points in other games where I put like a joke in like 12 months before ship, and like 3 months before, I'm like, I'm so sick of this line. I just want to pull out this line, but you keep it in because it's going to be funny the first time. I think a lot of the stuff we have is still funny in the game, which is good since we kind of want it to be a funny game.
Are you feeling confident that it's a good golf game as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, I am 100% confident it's a good golf game. Like we still have fun playing it, which I think is like that key indicator. Like if we never wanted to look at the game again at the end, like that is, like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. There's a lot of games where I've worked on where I'm like, I don't want to touch this for like at least 3 months, but we still play it. We still have fun playing it, which I think is like a really good sign. Like if we're not sick of it after playing it for like the last 2 years, I think that's a good sign that there's something there.
Yeah. So the Mcilroy Brothers, how did that get lined up? Are you just trying to lasso onto some people that have some built-in communities that'll be excited about the game?
This one is actually that was a weird one because we it's one of these things where like scaling everything up again. We're thinking of doing commentary ourselves, and we did some scratch commentary, which I think there's actually video with us like doing our dumb voices doing commentary in there, and we realized very quickly that we needed a lot more, and we needed people who were way funnier than us to do this commentary. And like we were talking about it, and the thing that came was like, we really need like a McIlroy Brothers type of like group that we can just give this to, or just give like, say, hey, this is for when the ball lands in the sand, go wild, and have them like hit our style and our tone. And we kind of had this moment like, maybe we should just, email the McIlroys and see if they're interested. And we did, and they were interested, and I'm still blown away that they're like, yeah, we want to be part of this weird golf enterprise. But they've been absolutely wonderful. They've dumped hours and hours of commentary, and we give them some like lines in the story and things like that. And it's like I am super, super honored to have those guys on. I'm a huge fan of like my brother and me, and the stuff that those guys do over at Polygon as well. And it's been really great having them as part of the game.
Is it a weird thing to reach out to Polygon, who's a member of the press, to be like, hey, can you get involved with this game, and then kind of just not review it, I guess?
That's why I figured that part of it would be why this whole thing would sync. Like, hey, we want you in our game, but also you review games. So this is very clearly a conflict of interest. I understand if that's like, you can't do anything with that. And it was super cool. Like there's some stuff on the Polygon side where those guys can't cover our game, which makes sense. But they've been super great about it, and all of the like Chris Grant and all those guys have been super supportive of it, and it's been really wonderful just roping people into like the No Goblin cinematic universe.
Prestigious cinematic universe.
Yeah,
perfect. So you've had a crazy career. You've been in a lot of very impressive development studios in your past, and I'm curious, like, how often do you think about your path through the industry, and is there one era in particular, one studio that you think about a lot?
it's definitely been very weird. It's not a traditional path. Like I think about Pandemic a lot actually.
Okay.
When I think about it, so I worked at Pandemic from 2000 to 2005. So that was the classic Army Men game, Army Men RTS, if you remember that,
Yeah.
and Destroy All Humans, which was where we spent most of our time on that. And it was right before social media, so we didn't have a sense of Destroy All Humans actually being a successful game because we were also in Australia as well. So we didn't see we didn't go to like GameStops to see posters and stuff up because we didn't really have that infrastructure. So we shipped it, and it was pretty grueling. It was like 3 years, and the last 6 months were kind of absolute brutal, like getting this thing out the door. But at the end of it, we thought like we kind of just just got it out. Like, you know, we didn't know there was this huge reception. We didn't know millions of people were playing it. We didn't get a sense it was really huge, and it was one of those things that didn't hit me until like years later. Actually, when we moved to Austin, when I went to work at Twisted Pixel, we had like the movers taking all of our stuff from Boston to like go down to Austin, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" It's like, "Oh, I design video games. I just finished working on this game called Rock Band, if you've heard of that." I was like, "Oh yeah, Rock Band, that's okay, cool." And then they're moving in all that stuff, and I have this great poster. Actually, you can see it behind me right there. So I got this poster when I left Pandemic for saying "Best of luck." And it's this awesome concept art from Destroy All Humans, and the movers are bringing this thing. It's like, "Whoa, you worked on Destroy All Humans?" I was like, "What? That's the thing you're pulling from my resume as the big game, you know?" But yeah, like it's been super weird. Like there's so many people have come up to me like over the last like decade of like going, "Wow, I really love Destroy All Humans. It was fantastic." And it's weird. It's weird getting that reception after basically being in a cone of silence developing that game and not really having any sense of whether people liked it or not. And it's super flattering because it's also the first original IP I worked on, and like worked with like, you know, a small group of, we started off with 15 people and ended up with like 40 people, but it holds a special place in my heart because it's our, you know, original IP. It's funny. It's a relatively good game, but it's
Yeah.
I keep thinking about that a lot, especially when I think about No Goblin as well, because like the future of like what do we want this studio to be? We want to hire people and bring people on, and a lot of the times when we first started that Pandemic, we're like 8 people when we first started. And I was like the perfect team size for building stuff. Like everyone could still communicate. There wasn't much bureaucracy or things like that. And so, yeah, I think about those guys a lot, and also because I registered a lot of things to my email address at Pandemic, which I can't get anymore. So whenever I can't like renew my domain names, I realize it's because I registered to an email address to a company that doesn't exist anymore, and I cry a little bit.
That's the weirdest way to constantly be reminded of where you work. So why do you like? So what fascinates you about that era is just the secret impact that game had, just like this fan base growing out of nowhere, and trying to figure out why that franchise caught on. Is that what you think about?
I think about that a lot, and I think it was just an enjoyable time. Like it was the PS2 era of making games, so a lot of stuff hadn't been locked down to like, this is how you build a camera, this is how you build encounters. Like there was still room to explore for how you make video games. And they did that really great like B grade video game like chunk of PS2 games, which I love. And I'm actually pretty honored to be a part of. And it's actually one of the reasons why I like doing PlayStation VR stuff right now. Is it's the same thing. It's like, you know, VR rules haven't been locked down to a science, and there's still room to explore. And like, no one's going to complain that you're riding on top of a robot, you know, in VR, because like there hasn't been this codified thing of this is how you must do VR. So it's been kind of nice, like sitting down with Panzer and like working out like what's a brand new camera mechanic that we all to make this work, and like coming up with half a different dozen ideas and trying them out.
Yeah, PSVR and the lineup, it seems pretty wet and wild compared to, I think, Oculus. Well, Vive, I guess, is a little bit crazy too, just on the Steam store and whatnot. But I feel like with Oculus, it seems like a lot of Jason Rubin emphasizing like, hey, be super careful. Like comfort is king for everything VR. Let's not blow this. Let's not make people puke. And maybe it's just seeing like the Resident Evil 7 demo or other PSVR demos like, God, what is the sci-fi shooter one?
Oh, Farpoint?
Yes, Farpoint, where it's like, oh, you can move and look around at the same time. So I'm just curious, like, what kind of direction you receive from Sony as far as like making sure it's a comfortable experience.
So Sony has been super helpful with that. They actually have a VR consultation lab that every VR game has to go through before they can release. And so we send our game through and like, hey, here's our game. here's tell us what's wrong. Tell us what we need to fix to stop people from being nauseous. And we've been doing our own nausea testing, and Panzer actually gets super motion sickness and like has to take like Dramamine when she's playing FPSs and stuff. So she's been kind of our puke tester internally, which is great. So like we send them a build, and they go through and they pound on it for a couple of days and send us feedback going, when you're turning like this robot's animation in this specific case, because it moves in this specific way, could cause nausea, or we recommend that you consider like these angles on these different things, and like coming up with like really interesting nuanced feedback, which has been absolutely invaluable to us because we're a two-person team. So Sony's been like super helpful, and I obviously can't talk to their E3 staff or any of the other developers or things like that, but like they are incredibly stringent on making sure that like it's a your consistent frame rate, no nausea, like all the things you need to be in VR, they're doubling down on, which I think is really, really awesome.
Did they send any like bullet point rules, like absolutely don't do this when experimenting with the PSVR? Like we know this won't work.
They have guidelines, and they very strongly recommend you go by those guidelines. And then it's the usual console thing of like there's certification requirements, and you can't do these things if you want to release a game on PlayStation VR.
Do you have any good examples from that?
A good one is you can't drop frames. You have to have a solid frame rate, which is absolutely essential if you're doing VR. So like if you have a game that drops frames in PlayStation VR, you're not shipping that game essentially, which is thank you as someone who is going to buy a PSVR and probably buy through like the entire launch catalog because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's nice to know that like I'm not going to be reaching for the headset like I did in the old DK2 days.
So I'm curious, like, how hard is it to develop for PSVR? Because this game's also coming out just for regular, old-fashioned gaming as well, right? So how hard is it to go that extra step and make it available on PSVR?
It's actually not that hard. Like we're two people, and I'm like the only person touching code, so the bar is relatively low since I'm not a programmer. But no, it's actually been really, really good. Like a lot of the middleware stuff already supports it, and it basically puts a lot of the emphasis on what you're doing as a developer on coming up with good design and good solutions. And I mean, I can cheat a little bit because I had all that Rock Band experience, so I have experience with unique peripherals and like getting stuff working like that. So I have a little bit of a cheat sheet over there, but no, it's been actually pretty like getting it running on the hardware and moving around. It's been the easy part. Like the hard part for us, and it's like the fun hard part, has been more like what's our camera model, what's our movement model, like how do we make this a really good experience in VR at the same time as it being a game that you can play on a TV as well.
Yeah, for sure. So if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd look at like this PS4 Pro being revealed and stuff like that and think, do they need the extra horsepower to make those VR games work because you have to render them twice? Do you think there's any validity to that?
Nah, not at all. Like Wayward Sky is a really good example of that. They're running 90 frames per second on a base PlayStation 4, which is ridiculous. There is enough power there. Like if I can hit a frame rate on there, and I'm some like designer guy who can barely program, like there's enough power in there. It's conspiracy theory stuff. Okay. Like having said that, like I cannot wait to like take advantage of the pro stuff and like turn up all our dials and make everything pretty. But yeah, no, you can look at the launch lineup. There's like 24 odd games. I don't know the exact number, but there's a ton of games coming out at launch day, which is like for any hardware launch is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, man, you can make things so much dumber and so much funnier in PS4 Pro.
That's true. Like we're gonna make all the jokes will be like 50% funnier if you get a PlayStation 4 Pro.
Now it needs to be the same level of funny going from PS4 to PS4 Pro. We don't want to create a discrepancy.
I'm sorry. There's no difference in gameplay and jokes. Everything's fine. Please don't fail like Game Sony.
So you mentioned their Harmonix days and work with their crazy peripherals. Do you want to just describe what you worked on at Harmonix when you entered the studio? What were the big challenges in front of you?
Yeah, that was a real fun experience. So like I joined Harmonix in 2006, so it was right as Rock Band was ramping up. So everyone was working on Guitar Hero 2, and like this small tiny team was like starting up on Rock Band, and it was a lot of like, can we really ship like plastic instruments in a box and have people buy them and have it play online? And like it's that whole scope thing again. Like this thing is absolutely ridiculous. Is this really a thing we could ship? But a lot of our time was spent on just making that band experience fun. It was basically like Rob K and I like going into rooms, like trying to figure out how much like mental bandwidth you have when you're staring at this track to know what the bassist is doing or knowing what the drummer is doing. So it was a lot of like on one hand, there's a lot of like gameplay stuff like that, like finding out the right balance of like how much you can interact with other people while still beat matching. And then on the other hand, we had this crazy behemoth of you have 3 different types of controllers of 4 different players that have to connect online and synchronize network sessions, and they have to do this on a console that's been designed to play Halo. And so it's one of those things of like we would go to Microsoft and basically say, here are all the requirements we need to ship. We need you to waive this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. It's basically say just we need you to like basically ignore half of your certification requirements to let us ship this game, because we can't let one controller play the entire game because you can't sing with a drum kit. Like there's all of these like crazy kind of restrictions that we had to work around and really kind of figure out for the first time. And same with DLC as well. Like we were the first game to do like weekly DLC, and that idea of like any regular DLC was new to the platform. It was like 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And so we were basically breaking platforms left and right, and then frantically patching to try and like work around all of these restrictions that we were the first game to like find out.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to think about, like how important it was for Harmonix at that era, just having solid relationships and lines of communication, like begging first party to like waive those certain features, certification, but then also just think about the entire music licensing angle, where I'm sure it's just 1,000 times you have to go knock on doors and write letters begging for bands to let you use their music, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the whole music was thankfully like kind of separated from us a little bit, but those guys were doing like insane things, like because we needed stems and multi-tracks to like mix into the game, so it wasn't the kind of thing of like getting permission to use this song and then like downloading the MP3 and putting it in. It's like we need the masters, and these masters were locked in a vault 20 years ago somewhere, and like they don't know if they're going to be intact when they come through, or if they're even the right takes that were used in the final version of the song. And so there'd be tons of times where like we'd get masters in and it would be like this completely different mix for a song that we all knew, and like, this is amazing, but we can't use this at all. But yeah, that whole thing was absolutely amazing. And it's like one of the, like there's always those like guilty pleasures you get when you're working on like a big project, and like going through and being able to hear like isolated vocals for like Freddie Mercury, or like going through and like hearing isolated bass parts for stuff because I'm a bass player. It's like, it's one of those perks of the job that I really miss, actually.
Do you remember what was the biggest like Hail Mary song for Rock Band 1? The one that you're really happy you got in that was down to the wire?
Oh man, I actually remember the RB1 set list now.
Let's see, Say It Ain't So was on there. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, don't even mention Say It Ain't So to me. That's the first song in the set list. And so whenever we were doing testing, like off a blank like console, like, you have to play Say It Ain't So. And so like, and we would always hear it. And then there was a bug that we shipped and like patched in first, where random would break when you're doing randomized songs. So once you play through all the songs first, it would just play Say It Ain't So over and over again.
Oh,
and so like it's like one of those songs that I get like an involuntary eye twitch like whenever I hear Say It Ain't So. Every other song's fine though.
Oh yeah, every other one's perfect. But like, I think Gimme Shelter's in Rock Band 1, right?
Gimme Shelter's good. Highway Star was fun.
Yeah.
Beastie Boys fan, so Sabotage was always good.
That's gotta be such a fun feeling in the studio when like those things start to get locked in. And I imagine it's like staff emails or staff meetings, like, by the way, we got the Stones, and everyone's like, heck yeah.
Yeah, we'd have like these Friday lunches, and they'd be like, for a while we'd be announcing like the new songs that we locked in, and those were always great. It's like, yeah, we got Highway Star, yeah, it was awesome.
How many times do they announce that you guys got a game or got a certain track, and everyone's just looking around like, I don't know that one. Does anyone else know that one? Is this good?
Like, we got the Jonas Brothers. It's like, yeah, but like that whole era was absolutely insane. Like we went from when I joined we were 60 people, and then when we shipped we were 300, and like
what?
Yeah, it was like a course of 18 months. It's like resources and money and people and attention just like funneling into this thing.
Is that EA money or MTV money, or where's that coming from?
MTV. It's like MTV, and then because we were just bought out by MTV at that time, so they wanted to like invest in us, and it was going to be this big huge thing, which it kind of turned out to be as well. But yeah, that grew absolutely huge, and like I remember like vividly clearly the E3 2009 when the Who played our E3 party, and it was like sitting in the second row at a Who concert while they played for our game at E3. It's like, well, this is the top. Like there is no possible way that this can ever get bigger.
And then a vision came to you of a spinning limousine and a talking skeleton.
Yes, I was like, that's it. Skeleton-based futures. I gotta quit. I gotta go Twisted Pixel, make Gunstringer, go make Roundabout, and just making sure there's a skeleton in every game I make from this point onwards.
It's perfect. So I'm fascinated by those early days of Harmonix and what it was like to have the majority of the team working on Guitar Hero 2, and then just this weird Skunkworks project. Because I'm trying to remember how that worked. So it's like, okay, eventually you just sold Guitar Hero 2 to Activision. So did it feel kind of like, oh man, we're making something that's going to secretly top Guitar Hero 2 and no one knows it?
Yeah, it was really weird because there was basically this design pit of like all of like the designers that the three of us were in. It was like myself on Rock Band, like Chris Foster working on Phase, which was the iPod game, and then we had Chris Canfield working on Guitar Hero 2. And so we'd see like GH2 builds go up and like, oh, that's a cool song, and like secretly like sneak over and play the new song and come back. But at that time, like Rock Band was like super secret. Like and we were having people coming out to check like GH2 out. Like Activision would come through, or Red Octane, and so we had this room that was our Rock Band room that whenever like anyone else came through that wasn't meant to know about it, we'd put like paper over the windows and like crazy security, like make sure they don't find out anything about this game because otherwise we're in trouble. And it was this weird thing, like this small team working on this game that was like the most secret possible thing it could possibly be.
That's such a bizarre idea, because the rest of the studio must know what's going on there, right?
Oh yeah.
Are they all jealous? Like, holy crap! Like Guitar Hero seems like olden days now because we want to work on this game that has all the instruments in there.
Yeah, it's one of those things of like when you have a multi-studio team of like you have the small team like doing pre-production while the big team finishes off, and then those kind of flip.
Yeah.
So yeah, like in that pre-flip situation, it was super surreal, and it was surreal as well because a lot of those guys. So like I came on. I had my first interview at Harmonix the week before Guitar Hero came out, and I came on a couple of months after that, and. Like, it's the kind of situation I was talking about with Destroy All Humans, where those guys didn't really have a good sense for how big Guitar Hero was at the time. So they're like, there'd be press coming in. It's like, wow, we were on this daily talk show. It's like, do you guys not realize you're like taking over like the zeitgeist for like 2006? Like, do you not understand how big Guitar Hero is? And then, of course, like that hit us for Rock Band as well. It's like, oh wow, Rock Band got mentioned on like GMA or something. And, like, meanwhile, it's like destroying retail and doing all this other stuff.
And do you think social media just wiped out that discrepancy now in the industry? Like, people have a good idea of how popular their game is?
Yeah, I think like social media, like I still think there's a little bit of like kind of gap there, but it's definitely much less. Like there's way more Roundabout fans, for example, than I ever figured. Which like Roundabout, it's a small game. Like it's nowhere near AAA, like in any sense of the word. But like it's still super surprising when like I find out people loved Roundabout, or like I'm showing something at E3 and I'm like, hey, we're no Goblin, we made Roundabout. It's like, oh, I loved Roundabout. It's a spinning limo game. And it's like, oh wow, people actually played this. That's really cool. So I think that whenever you make something, when you're so close to it, I think there's always going to be that like perception gap of like, I've been staring at this thing for 2 years and I have no idea how people are reacting to it, and then how people are actually reacting to it. But yeah, social media has definitely made that window a lot smaller, because I can like look over at TweetDeck and see someone saying that they like are dumb characters in Robot Golf or something.
So how often do you think about the music rhythm genre? Do you ever think about how difficult it would be to make a new one, a Rock Band 5, I guess it would be at this point?
I try not to think about it much anymore. Yeah. It's just one of those things like I invested like 5 years of my life into, and like obviously like I wish those guys well and everything. Like I still love music games and things like that, but I kind of like spent my entire creative energy for 5 years making rhythm action video games, and so I'm kind of out of ideas in a way. Well, not out of ideas. Like there's always stuff to do, but like it's one of those things where it's like. it's like if you ate like the same meal over and over again for a year, you're like, I kind of don't want to eat pizza for a little bit.
Right.
It's kind of the same deal for me with music games. Like, I love music games, but like the idea of like making another music game right now, I need a bit more space before I dive into that genre.
And if you're eating pizza every day, you don't want to go home and pontificate and just get philosophical about the concept of pizza.
No. Let me think about square pizzas for a little bit. Like, you kind of start thinking about other foods and dreaming.
Yeah, for sure. And then you went on. Oh, I gotta ask because we're actually doing a game club where we play through a game with the community, and right now we're doing Bioshock.
Oh, awesome!
And I saw that you were a consultant at Irrational. What is that? How does that work?
It's like the smallest credit possible. I basically they needed some. There's a couple of things there. There was like a little bit of design stuff I did, like pitching UI stuff and like control scheme stuff, and then the bulk of it was actually doing audio work for that E3 demo, the first Bioshock E3 demo that came out. It was basically I'd quit Pandemic and I hadn't started at Harmonix yet, and I needed money to live, and so I was like, hey, I'm free for these months while I'm sorting out like visa paperwork and things like that. You have a studio in Australia, like if you guys need help, and like I have friends who are working there as well, and it's like, hey, I am a free bot. I'm not free, but I have some value. But I'm available, and so I basically sat in for a little while and like hooked up audio and like did a bunch of audio work, just getting everything sort of set up for that E3 demo. Like I definitely wouldn't say I worked on Bioshock in any sense of the word. Like those guys like crunched through it and made an amazing game, but it was really
in some sense of the word you worked on it.
Like I checked in some stuff for a couple of weeks.
Okay,
but like I am immensely proud that I could at least like even just like lightly touch the side of Bioshock and be associated with it in that way. Like those guys are amazing.
And now you get to put Bioshock on your resume the rest of your life, which is pretty good.
Yeah, like when no Goblin creators because no one buys Robot Golf, I'll say I was definitely a guy who worked on Bioshock.
How hard is it to keep an indie studio up and running? You said you only have 2 full-time staff, which must help a little bit, but is it more challenging than people would think?
Yeah, like it's a business. You're running a business, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't really take into consideration when they're thinking about like going and like starting their stuff. And that's especially one of the reasons why, like, I don't really call us an indie studio in a sense, because even though we are small, like we're geared around being a business. We make sure we have to hit our dates on X thing. We want to have good relationships with first parties and like publishers and things like that. Like if Nintendo came to us and wanted to make us like Waluigi Party, like I wouldn't say no to that because that'd be absolutely hilarious if you're listening to Nintendo. So it's like it's one of those things where I don't. It's more like we're running a small studio, and it's very, very small because it's mainly the two of us who have to eat and pay rent. But yeah, it's really hard.
So what does that look like, trying to keep up those relationships? Is it just emails? Are you going and visiting Sony and Microsoft headquarters? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it's like. It's all of the stuff that we like used to do in like the AAA days of like, hey, I'm gonna come and say hi and chat and like show you this secret thing we're working on, and maybe there's something we can do there. It's a lot of like hanging out at like the JW at E3 instead of hanging out on the floor and like pretending to wear a suit and like having to hang out with Dave, which is probably the worst part of having to be a business guy. But it's very surreal, and it's one of those things like I've been making games for 20 years now, and like I'll go and step into this room of like seasoned business people with suits and stuff, and I was like the biggest imposter in the entire world walking through this room. But
meanwhile, you have Rock Band and Bioshock on your resume. I think you're doing okay, man. Jesus.
Yeah. But it's like I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I don't think I could ever work at another studio ever again. Like being able to like have like not only like full control over the games we make, but control over how we make those games and the wonderful people we work with, and like being able to say, like it's a great example. Like we wanted to like beef up our animation for a Robot Golf right at the end, and so like, wow, we should get Hello Winter, who's this amazing person who does like this great animation stuff, and bring them on for a month, and like just being able to make those calls like within 5 minutes and like send out a tweet and have someone on board is just it's how I like to make games. It's like you can make stuff really quickly, and if you come up with a really dumb idea, you can throw it in there, and it stays, and then people wonder why you put that dumb idea there, and that's the no Goblin way, and I don't think I can do anything else but that from now on.
Are you relying on the kindness of strangers? Do you have secret dump trucks of money? What's your secret here?
Yeah, especially dump trucks, secret dump trucks of money.
Of course,
No, it's like very very strict budgeting essentially. Like we basically have a very like minimum wage budget we're working on, and like making sure that when we ramp up, we're ramping up and not killing ourselves financially to do it. And it's like it's actually why I think we make a lot of the decisions we do. Like on Roundabout, we did FMV. Part of it was because it was a really fun and cool way to tell that story. But the other half of it is we couldn't afford an animator. So like it's the only way, if we're going to tell a story, like this is the only way we can do it. And I think it's like that old saying, like, the limitations you have like help you make like really great decisions for like design and help you like make greater things. And so in that sense, we've had a lot of really great limitations that have helped us make really fun games. But, like, I think that's one of those things, like going forward, like I don't think, like, obviously we want to make sure that we can eat good food again and like buy clothes and that kind of stuff. But I think it's one of those things that behind No Goblin as well is like we want to keep us small. So like when we do eventually grow and like bring people on full time, like I don't think we ever want to be like a 100-person studio kind of thing. It's more like small, like 8 people close knit that we had at the start of pandemic.
Do you want to actually get a studio space going into the future? Are you happy working out of the house?
I would like to not have my desk like 5 inches away from my couch. That'd be really nice.
So what does the future look like for you guys?
Golf. Robot golf. 100-foot robot golf coming October 10 to PlayStation 4.
100 sequels.
It's a lot of golf. So we're shipping October 10. And then we've kind of committed to it for a little while. We've got some great ideas that we're going to be doing for expansions, well, like patches that we put out for free that'll increase what's going on in the game. And we have like a bunch of fun ideas for how we basically want to take robot golf and make it a little bigger. So it's been one of those nice things that working with Sony, we've kind of got this like great support for doing this kind of stuff. Like we can go through and they're promoting us on the PlayStation Store right now, and they've got like a really cool like coming soon 100-foot robot golf next to like Final Fantasy 15 and Mafia and stuff, which makes no sense. But like we've got this great support from them, and it's given us the confidence to go, okay, well, we know that we're at least going to support this. Like even if no one buys this game, we're at least going to be able to support it for X amount of months. And then if people do buy this game, then maybe we can support it for a little longer. So please buy our game.
All right, a hell of a pitch, and then you can get a nice studio going for you guys.
Yeah, and then I can buy clothes and stuff. It'll be great.
Cool. Well, hey Dan, I really appreciate your time, and best of luck launching the game. I'm looking forward to finally playing this thing.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.